Part 8. The beginning they erased. The moment I asked to see the beginning, everything went silent. Not just the rain, not just the wind, even the space between seconds felt like it stopped existing. The man closed his eyes. And for the first time, he didn't try to stop me. He only whispered, "If you see it, you won't be able to stay the same." The shadow stepped back, just one step, like even it was afraid of what I had asked for. And then, the world broke, not shattered, rewound. The ground beneath me dissolved into light. The sky turned white, and I was falling, not downward, but backward through time itself. Voices echoed around me, not clear words, memories, feelings, choices I didn't remember making, but my soul recognized instantly. Then I saw it, the beginning, a human village, warm, alive, real, and me, just a girl, no shadows in my eyes, no darkness following my steps, just human, and him, standing at the edge of the village, watching from the forest line, already not belonging to time. He wasn't the monster yet. Not fully. He was something older, restrained, starving for something he didn't understand. Our eyes met, and that was it. The moment everything started breaking. I walked toward him, not afraid, not warned, like something inside me already trusted him before thought existed. He whispered, "You shouldn't see me," but I did, and then, the memory shifted violently, like something was trying to erase it again. The shadow appeared in the memory. Not as a person, as interference, as correction. "She is not meant to meet you," it said. "She is meant to live." The man in the memory stepped forward. And for the first time, I saw what he really was. Not vampire, not human, something between law and curse. "I choose her," he said. The world reacted instantly. Cracks of light tore through the sky. The shadow's voice sharpened. "Then she will never remain one life." And then, it happened. A flash. A broken decision. A rewriting of fate. I saw myself die. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just, erased from one version of existence. Like a page removed from a book mid-sentence. But before I disappeared completely, I reached for him, and smiled. "I'll find you again," I said. The memory shattered. I gasped back into the present. My knees hit the ground hard. But I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt complete, because now I understood everything. The man stood still, watching me carefully, waiting for my reaction. The shadow spoke softly. "Now she remembers why she returns." I looked up at him. Not confused anymore. Not lost. Just aware. "You didn't trap me in a cycle," I said slowly. A pause. "You tried to keep finding me inside it." Silence. His expression changed slightly. Not denial. Recognition. The shadow stepped forward. "And every time she returns," it said, "you fall in love again." My heart tightened. But this time, it didn't break me. Because I finally saw the truth clearly. Not romance. Not horror. Something far more dangerous. A loop built from choice. Not force. I stood up slowly, and said, "So the curse isn't that I forget." A pause. "It's that I always choose to come back." The wind stopped. Even the shadow went still. Because that wasn't in the script anymore. The man finally spoke. Quietly. "I stopped trying to save you from the cycle." A pause. "The moment I realized you were the one keeping it alive. That should have hurt. But it didn't. Because it finally made sense." I took a step forward. Toward him. Not away. Not trapped. Choosing. The shadow's voice sharpened. "This is not how it ends." But I didn't look at it. Not anymore. Because for the first time, I understood something deeper than memory. Cycles don't end when someone breaks them. They end when someone stops fearing them. I looked at him and said softly, "If I find you again, don't let me forget this time." His eyes widened slightly, like that sentence had never existed before. And then, something changed. The world didn't collapse. It didn't reset. It waited, like it was unsure whether the cycle still had control. The shadow whispered, "She's not resetting." For the first time, fear entered its voice. And I realized, the story was no longer repeating. It was becoming something new. And as the darkness around us loosened, he stepped closer. Not as a guard, not as a curse, but as someone finally allowed to exist in the same moment I chose. And he whispered, then stay. The cycle didn't break. It didn't continue. It paused, waiting for my answer. To be continued. Part 9, When the Cycle Learns Your Name. The world didn't move. It listened, like my choice had become something heavier than time itself. I stood in the silence between what was broken, and what was not yet decided. And for the first time, I understood the truth fully. The cycle was not a prison. It was a question that never got a final answer. The man stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like even hope could be dangerous if handled wrong. The shadow didn't move this time. But I could feel it watching differently now. Not controlling, calculating. You shouldn't be able to remain here, it said quietly. There should have been a reset. I looked at it, and something inside me felt strangely calm. No, I said softly. This time, I didn't resist the memory. A pause. I integrated it. The air shifted slightly, like reality didn't like that sentence. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in doubt, in realization. You're not just remembering anymore, he said. You're carrying all versions of yourself at once. That sounded impossible, but it felt true, like I was standing on top of every life I had ever lived, all at the same time. The shadow finally spoke again. This is not evolution. A pause. This is contamination of the loop. For the first time, it sounded uncertain. I took a step forward. And the ground responded, not with collapse, but with stability, like something inside the system had accepted me. I think I understand now, I said. Why I keep returning. The man didn't interrupt. He just watched, like he was afraid to break the moment. I continued. It's not because I'm trapped. A pause. It's because I never accepted the ending. Silence. Even the shadow didn't respond immediately. And then, I felt it. A memory that didn't belong to any timeline. Not past. Not future. Something outside both. I saw myself standing at the edge of darkness. Not dying. Not being erased. But choosing the reset. Willingly. And I saw him. Reaching for me. Begging me not to. But I smiled. And said, if I stay, I become something they control. If I leave, I can find you again without them watching. And then, I stepped into the void myself. I gasped back into reality. My breath shook. Not fear. Understanding. The man stepped closer. You chose this, he whispered. I nodded slowly. Not the cycle. A pause. The return. The shadow moved slightly. That is impossible, it said. But she remembers choosing departure. I looked at it, and for the first time, it felt like it was losing control of the story. Yes, I said softly. But I also chose to return. Silence fell again. Different this time. Not empty. Rewriting. The man's voice lowered. If you can choose both leaving and returning. A pause. Then the cycle isn't repeating. He looked at me fully now. It's responding. That sentence changed everything. The shadow finally stepped forward. Slow. Uncertain. For the first time, it said. She is not a variable. A pause. She is an operator. The air trembled slightly. Not destruction. Awareness. I felt it too. Something inside the system adjusting to me. Not rejecting me anymore, but recognizing me. The man reached out his hand. Not forcing. Not pulling. Just offering presence. And he said quietly, if the cycle is responding to you. A pause. Then what do you want it to become? That question hit deeper than any memory. Because suddenly, I wasn't inside the cycle anymore. I was speaking to it. The shadow went still, waiting. Even it didn't know the answer anymore. I looked at both of them. At every version of this story I had ever lived. And I finally understood the true power I had never noticed before. I was never just part of the loop. I was the reason it changed direction. And I whispered, if you are going to keep bringing me back. A pause. Then I choose how I return. The world didn't break. It didn't reset. It shifted, like something ancient had finally agreed to listen. The shadow spoke one last time. Then the cycle evolves. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like acceptance. The man exhaled slowly. Not relief. Not fear. Just understanding. And he whispered, then no matter how many times you come back. A pause. I will recognize you. The air softened. The darkness loosened. The cycle didn't end, but it stopped trying to erase me. And as everything settled, I realized the final truth of the vampire world I had been pulled into. Love was never the curse. Forgetting was. And I no longer belong to forgetting. To be continued. Part 10, The One Who Remembers Everything, Finale. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt final, like the story had reached the point where even time stopped pretending it was in control. I stood there between him and the shadow. But for the first time, I didn't feel divided. The cycle wasn't pulling me anymore. It was watching me, waiting. The man stepped closer, not like before, protective, desperate, afraid of losing me. This time, steady, like he finally understood I wasn't something to hold. I was something that decides. You feel it now, he said quietly. The loop isn't forcing you anymore. I nodded, because it was true. Something had changed inside me completely. Not erased, not reset, but integrated. All versions of me, in one awareness. The shadow finally spoke. Its voice was different now. Less control, more exhaustion. You were never meant to become whole inside it. I looked at it, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear. Only clarity. Maybe that's why it kept repeating, I said softly. Because I was never supposed to stay broken. A pause. Even the shadow didn't answer immediately. The air around us began to shift again. But not like before. Not collapse. Not reset. Something closer to resolution. The man glanced at the space between us. Like he could feel it too. The cycle loosening its grip. You remember everything now, he said. Not as a question. A fact. Yes, I replied. But not as fragments. A pause. As one story. That word changed the atmosphere. One. Not many lives. Not loops. Not resets. One continuous existence across choices. The shadow stepped forward slightly. You are no longer inside the cycle, it said. You are standing above it. I exhaled slowly, and for the first time, I understood what that meant. Not escape, not victory, something far more unsettling. Responsibility. Because if I could see the cycle, then I could influence it. The man watched me carefully, and then said something quietly that felt heavier than anything before. So what happens now, when you don't forget me? I looked at him, not like a stranger, not like a memory, but like someone I had met across every version of existence. I don't think I ever forgot you, I said softly. A pause. I think I just kept meeting you differently. Something in his expression softened. Not relief. Recognition. The shadow finally lowered its voice. If she remains aware, it said. The cycle cannot erase her again. A pause. But it will adapt. The sky above us flickered slightly. Like reality adjusting its structure. I understood then. This wasn't an ending. It was a transition. And then the shadow said the final truth. She is no longer the one returning. A pause. The cycle is now returning to her. A stillness followed that no longer felt like silence. It felt like anticipation. The man stepped closer one final time. Not to hold me, not to stop me, but to stand beside me. If it comes back to you, he said quietly. What will you do? I looked at the fading shadows around us. At the broken timelines that now felt like echoes instead of prisons. At the version of myself that had finally stopped running from existence. And I answered, I will not forget it again. A pause. And I will not let it rewrite me without my permission. The cycle trembled, not collapsing, acknowledging. The shadow closed its eyes briefly. Then the story continues, it said softly. Not as control, as acceptance. The man looked at me one last time. And for the first time in any version of this story, there was no fear in his eyes. Only certainty. No matter how the cycle shifts. No matter how many lives pass. No matter how many shadows return. I will find you, he said. And I smiled. Because now I finally understood the truth that had been hidden inside every version of this story. I was never just the girl who met a vampire. I was the one the cycle could never stop remembering. The darkness didn't end. It evolved. And somewhere beyond it, the story began again. But differently. This time, with me aware from the first moment.